and an author of 38 plus books which have now been translated into nearly 30 languages. And pretty soon this week itself, he has released a memoir on the pandemic times, but more of that we will, when we come to him, we will speak, we'll get to know about what inspired this new piece of creation. So let's get together to welcome Mr. Ramendra Kumar, affectionately called Ramen. And it's a pleasure to connect with you again, to see your smiling face and and look forward to this session where we are going to have, through the glimpses of your very, I would say, to use a food metaphor, a very eclectic life journey, and take some vignettes from there, and which will be both learnings for us as well as inspiration. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. So to begin with, I mean, this humongous number of 38 books. So how did this happen? And especially the fact that your training has been in an engineering background. So from there, when did the writing bug bite you, and how did it just flourish from there? Maybe let's start from that point.
Basically, I was bitten black and blue when I was just 7, and I wrote my first poem. It went something like this. Topsy and Tim went for a swim. Topsy swam well and broke the spell. Tim swam badly and went home sadly. It was one of the most horrendous poems ever written. But I, the proud poet, I took that scribbled piece of paper to my dad. I thought he will tell me, what is this poetry you're writing? Look at Chadda uncle's son, Putul. He writes maths and solves maths. Or he would have said, you've written something, but it could be better. He didn't say any of these things. He just picked me up, gave me a tight hug, and said one word: wonderful. So today, 38 books, 29 translations, whatever you have mentioned, is all because of that one word, wonderful. And I can't find a better way of communicating a father's approval and validation than what my father did that day to me. Then as I went to engineering, and their hobby, I mean, writing has always been an OCD for me throughout. You know, when I was in engineering, or later when I went to management and all. So during engineering, I used to write satire, basically. You know, I loved writing satire. So there was this situation where I was the literary and cultural secretary of my college, and we had trounced the opponents who belonged to the left part of the center. You know who I mean. Now, during their annual day function, when they had celebrated, so I had ripped off on all the entire ideology of left of center, you know. So they were waiting for an opportunity to get back at me. So we were editing a magazine. So I was one of the editors. So I was, a lady had written an entire satirical piece on the male chauvinist pig, the MCP. So I was told by my friends to write a rebuttal. So I wrote a rebuttal, and I called it the unfair sex. And it was a stinker, real stinker. But for my comrades, it was not so much what went into. They were just obsessed with the topic. The topic was unfair sex. Now they didn't realize that sex meant gender. They thought sex meant Kama Sutra, Khajuraho, the birds and the bees, and they went insane. They said, look at this guy, look at this Kaundala Raskala. He's writing about sex in a college magazine. We should teach him a lesson. So they put my mug. During those days, we didn't have WhatsApp and social media. So on placards, they put my face, pasted it, and took out processions. They called me a product of bourgeoisie, bastardic culture, and shouted slogans against me. And the copy of the magazine, they burnt in the campus. So I happen to have the dubious distinction of having of an author whose copies have been burnt for the first time, I think, in human civilization at street corners. So the first, what should I say, uh, bookish sati or a book sati, I was the author of that particular book. Salman Rushdie came 4 years later. So this was my first tryst with satire.
Great. And so this was when, which year and
Yeah,
where?
this was, if I tell the year, you'll know my age.
Okay.
But let me still tell it. It was in 84.
And the terrain was where? Where did this event happen?
This event happened in Usmania University where I did my engineering. I was in my final year civil engineering.
Mhm.
And so this is where this fracas took place.
Right. But then, so definitely you are in August company, because this has that always happened with whoever has tried to write something which is off the mark, or, challenging the norm. So this has, and so you are in August company, and so you shouldn't at all be worried about that. And but when you were narrating that little story, your first poem, I was just thinking that this is precisely the culture of writing that has come to fore now, which we call the terribly tiny tales. So, where the whole idea is how to tell a story in, say, 4 lines or 5 lines at
I
the
didn't see
most.
it that way. Great, yeah.
Yes, so so you have kind of pioneered that uh, style of writing, maybe 30 years before, even before that writing itself became a vogue or thought of about as a right. And so, but then, given the fact that all the hullabaloo that was generated from your first, from this satire piece of writing, and then from there coming to children's fiction, where you are actually doing not only telling tales, but telling tales with morals, and then from there moving into inspirational narratives or motivational speaking. How did that come about? Because I think children's fiction is again a very specialized niche genre, and not an easy genre as many think it to be. So how did that transition happen?
So I was, again, I continued with satire even after I joined my job. And I made sure that I don't hurt people's feelings too much. So gentle kind of satire. So when my daughter was 4, Ankita, my son happened, Aniket. And now my wife also works in the same steel plant as I. So her hands were kind of full, tending to the office chores and coming back home and all. So she gave me a lot of encouragement. She motivated me. She inspired me. She told me, "You're such a useless fellow. You cannot run a washing machine. You can't dry clothes. You can't sing a lullaby. You can't wash bums. You say you're a great writer. At least you think you're a great writer. So then why don't you tell some stories to Ankita while I take care of Aniket?" I took it up as a challenge. If your wife calls you dumb and stupid, then naturally that's the greatest motivating force. so, so I took it up as a challenge, but then I thought that I'm also an egoist. So I thought, why should I tell stories from the Panchatantra and Tenali Raman and all that? I'll think of my own stories. So I started telling these little stories to my daughter Ankita, and she simply lapped them up. But I'm not very sure whether she liked the content or just watching me sing and dance and making those funny kind of faces and all. But anyway, to her, I was a superstar writer, and the stories which she approved, I typed them in the word processor, sent them to the publisher, and they started getting published. Now, a couple of years later, my son Aniket joined the audience of and became the audience of 2 now. 1 plus 1, 2. Now, for me, the biggest challenge was their, what should I say, tastes and temperaments were completely different. For my daughter, it was once upon a time, long ago, there lived a beautiful princess. She fell in love with a tall, dark, handsome prince. And suddenly in strode a Rakshasa, and he attacked the prince, but the prince, using his brains, captured the Rakshasa and put live in a cage. And the prince and the princess lived ever after. And my son, I had told my son that your guru is Bruce Lee. So every day he would go and stand in front of a poster of Bruce Lee and say, Bruce Lee Paranam. And he liked the stories which were full of violence. He loved Spider-Man, Superman, then Batman, Iron Man. The only man he didn't know about was Padman because Padman hadn't luckily happened there. So for him, in the second reel, the hero would be clutching at the villain's lips and tearing it apart. In the 18th reel, the hero would be removing the kidney of the villain, shoving it in the throat. And that kind of, what should we say, raw, unbridled, unabridged violence. So for me, kind of balance, once upon a time, long, long ago, with dishum, 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 was a real challenge. Fortunately, I could somehow manage to balance these two. That's why today I'm a writer.
And a fantastic storyteller, because I have seen your videos where the whole art of performance storytelling that you bring about, as we just saw, like the changing of the voice modulation and other things. So
Someone is saying, my friend Sanjay is saying that my voice is breaking. Is there any issue on that?
No, it had maybe when you had dimmed a bit during the performance. Now it is.
It's okay, no? Okay,
Yeah,
I'll take care of that. Thank you, Sanjay. I'll take care of that.
it's very audible from
Yeah,
our end here, so
yeah.
not a problem at all. So, so coming back to this aspect of storytelling, and we see storytelling is also is kind of coming up as a full form of career in itself. Something that we used to always, when we thought storytelling, grandma tales, grandpa tales, or daddy mommy tales, it was limited to that. From that, it has come into a very proper vocation today. And I see you have been a major contributor in this transition of a story writer to a storyteller. I see you've been a mascot of this experiment at many levels. To our future writers and storytellers, what would you guide them? How do they thinking of getting into this space? What should be the way, if there is a way, that is?
Yeah, see, the first and most important thing is you should have a passion. You just can't get up one bright summer morning and say, hey, look, I'm wearing a printed shirt, so I'll be a storyteller. You should have a passion. You should be unself-conscious. Like many people have told me that, you act like a child. According to me, that is the greatest compliment for a storyteller or for any human being. Now, if I start thinking that what my mother-in-law is going to think when I'm jumping, or what my father-in-law is going to think when I'm singing, or what Dr. Piyush is going to say when I'm, running like this and making faces, then I won't be a storyteller. And when I say passion, Japanese have a word called ikigai.
Mm-hmm.
It's an all-consuming passion. That is something which makes you jump out of the bed every morning with that kind of hope and joy. So whether it's writing or storytelling, let me bridge the two. Whether it's writing or storytelling, you need to have that kind of a passion. Then basically every story comes out of imagination, observation, or experience. So if you have a great imagination, you are very observant and you've got some experience. Now, everybody might not have everything. Like a small child might not have experience, but what fantastic imagination he has. What a great sense of observation. So combining these three pieces, you can make a whole, which is a story. Then keep your eyes and ears open to ideas. Anything and everything can spark an idea. A caress of a parent, a conversation in a bus, a scene in a television, a tweet on Twitter, a post on Facebook, something on WhatsApp, just a fluttering of breeze, right? Of a remark which Dr. Piyush has made, that Rourkela is so resplendent in winter. That can spark a story. It can spark a, a whole idea. So anybody who wants to be a storyteller or writer should be in that space, always open to those tiny iridescent sparks flying around.
And what I also think, I mean, listening to you and from our previous conversation as well, you are the classic example that which should be following in many ways, because Indians per se tend to see life in silos, and you are somebody who's broken them. Like, we will say this is like, okay, engineer is like this, engineering trains you to be this, a corporate communication person, a management person is to be like this. But here we see you uh, taking a creativity skill, nurturing it throughout with a very happening career. You are one of the longest serving corporate communication professionals in the country. So, and oftentimes people say that, yes, we would have wanted to do this, we would have wanted to do that, but time nahi mila, and those kind of things. What would you say to that? Yes, passion is there, but how does that balance happen? And the second part of the question would be, how does this art of creative writing and storytelling also come into play in a very important role like corporate communications or managing
Yeah,
perceptions?
yeah. I think that's a brilliant question. First thing is that I've often heard that where do you get the time? Everybody has the same kind of time. Time is a four-letter word. It just depends on how you use it. You have to make certain kind of sacrifices. I had a full-time job, and a PR job is 24/7 job. At any given moment, a phone call would come that there's been some accident or some incident and all that. But then what do? You can't have luxuries of going to Kashmir, sitting in front of Dal Lake and thinking about poetry. No, you have to live in the here and now. So whatever time you get, I have made some sacrifices. What are the sacrifices I've made? I don't go to club except for swimming. I don't go to the boss's house and say, boss, what a speech that was you delivered in the AGM. And my cousin is in the army, so he is given this red, blue brand or whatever that is of liquor and all that. I don't do that. And secondly, what I do is I carry my inspirations with me. Even if I have to go and get a puncture repaired, I used to take my son or daughter. For all my lit fests within the country, I've taken my son or daughter. Wherever we go, even for a haircut, I used to take my son. We used to time our haircuts. So that they are my inspiration and I'm with them throughout. If you don't have this kind of, how should we say, intermixing of ideas, intermixing of passions and professions, at least in your head, then you will be in those silos you're talking about. And in the profession, in corporate communications or in any profession, writing, speaking, you know, or we can even say storytelling are extremely, extremely important. For example, I was the chief of corporate communications, and we used to have these incidents. Now, as you would realize that in a township uh, where Rourkela Steel Plant is responsible for anything and everything which happens, 6 lakh people, the supporting population, the roads, the clubs, and all that. If a fan falls in the community center, the managing director is blamed and Ramendra Kumar is blamed because I'm the spokesperson. So in such a situation, what what used to happen was whenever there's an accident, the chief of communications would be incommunicado. He would disappear somewhere. He would think like the proverbial ostrich that if he just embeds his head in the sand, things will wash. He can wish them away. What we decided was with the social media, you can't hide anything. You have to be transparent. And with social media, any guy with a smartphone becomes your correspondent in a captive township because almost every correspondent knows somebody or the other in the plant. And people have this tendency of sharing negative information more than positive information. So we developed a crisis management module that every time there was an incident in the plant, suppose there's a worker who has died in the traffic and raw materials. So I would get the information as soon as I would get it, I would go to the MD, prepare a 2-liner or a 10-liner and shoot it to all the traditional media plus the print, plus the electronic media and the social media that Mr. X Kumar has passed away because of this accident at this and this time. He hails from this village. He is, his wife and 2 kids are dependent on him, the management will do everything to provide whatever support it can, including a job offer. MD has expressed his deep anguish and an inquiry committee, etc. So within half an hour, this information would go. This is communication. Now, what it did, it completely scuttled rumors, right?
Mm.
Earlier, we used to keep quiet. Silence is the worst kind of thing. It's not golden. It's the worst kind of thing possible in these situations, because the union would go to town and the headlines on the front page or inside pages very boldly would say that Rourkela steel plant has messed up. Now also their version would go, but our version also would be carried that RSP has given this statement and RSP is planning to do this. So this is communication. This is creative communication. And you know who my inspiration is? Can you guess? The greatest communicator the world has ever seen, at least in the last 2 centuries. There's only one man. Only one man, and that is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi.
Okay.
He had 2 kinds of great communicators. One was Hitler, who relied on propaganda. The other was Gandhi, who relied on ethics, truth, and credibility, etc., etc. So what did Gandhi do when he had to wage that war against the British? First and foremost, he got in touch with the stakeholders, his own people. Whenever there was a crisis, he reacted immediately, quickly, and continued reacting, like Chauri Chaura case. Then he never ever took the enemy for granted. He always knew what the strengths and weaknesses were. And he was always ethical. He was always transparent. So today, if you want to be an effective communicator, you have to follow the principles of Gandhigiri.
And just to add one more E, which was kind of the undercurrent in this through this example, was, I think, empathy. I think empathy is another very important aspect.
Absolutely.
And be it corporate communications, be it even storytelling, if we don't empathize to the level of the listener, then it will always be a, you know, I am there and you are there kind of a communication, and then it will be like always a top-down thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that
you made a brilliant point. You're absolutely bang on. Whether it was Gandhiji's Gandhigiri or even this Rishikesh Mukherjee's films, or the kind of stories which I like to write. And I think Rishikesh Mukherjee was the greatest filmmaker India has ever seen. Whether you agree with me or not, you might say somebody else. But in terms of a complete package, empathy is the key, especially in today's terms, especially during COVID and post-COVID times.
And of course, I mean, Rishikesh Mukherjee easily is what we call the middle of the road cinema. He brought the best traditions of the commercial popular cinema and the best emerging traditions of responsible art house parallel cinema, and gave us a narrative that had songs and a message which could entertain and enlighten. So definitely he ranks among the any list of top 10, top 5 filmmakers in Hindi cinema or Indian cinema will not be complete with. I totally agree with you on that. Anand remains an all-time favorite film. But we shouldn't get again distracted to getting into that zone, which is my calling and your favorite. So coming back to writing, and here, and you know, you talked about about the impact of Gandhi and other examples. As a writer, do you have a favorite, just to keep it simple? And have you any particular writer or his writing that has influenced you, and if so, why and how?
I don't think any writer has influenced me. I've been only influenced by my dad, completely, absolutely, totally. He's my God, and whatever I am today is because of him. And he told me one thing, beta, that you have been given some quality or some creativity. Use it so as to create some little difference in the society for the better. Don't just write for entertainment. Anybody can write for entertainment. But apart from entertainment, a tiny value somewhere, if you can add, your job is done. And only then your job is done. You'd also asked me a question, I think, about how did I become a motivational speaker and all that. Should I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, the reason is that basically I come from a broken home. My parents got divorced when I was just around 14. So my dad brought me up. So those shards still prickle. Those memories are very, very deep and hurting. I had a very difficult time even in school and all. I tried to commit suicide. My father saved me and all. So that is one experience. The second experience is that how my father, resuscitated my career and me. Then my marriage. I think it's a near perfect marriage, and 50, I take 50% credit. My wife says that 95% credit should go to her, and only 5% credit should go to me for the perfection in the marriage. And I've got two lovely children. So then I thought that why should I not write about my experiences as a
Mm.
parent, as a child, and as a life partner. So that's how I started writing. I wrote a book on parenting, and now I write about relationships. You, me, and us, the happiness connect. So that's how I moved into it. I thought whatever I have suffered or whatever I have gained, I should share it with people so that people don't make the same mistakes and learn from people like my father, who are such an inspiration to me.
And it takes a lot of courage to be able to put our personal out there, because yes, it is difficult, but once we put that, a huge barrier is broken. Then the reader and the writer no longer are us and them. They're rather like co-communicators. They're like sharers. They're like friends. And here I would also like to maybe highlight the thing which I briefly mentioned in the intro about your new book. And here you are delving into a totally different mind, different space, which I would let you speak about. How did this idea came about, and what should we expect in this latest creation of yours?
So this book of mine is called the Canine Chronicles, and it's about love and laughter in the time of Corona. So it is written from the viewpoint of my canine. I don't like to call canines dogs, thanks to Dharmendra, because in every third movie of his, he would say, "Kutte kamine tera khoon pee jaunga, kutte ki maut marunga." So such a beautiful creature canine is, and he has been reduced to an abuse. So I call them grown-up puppies or guppies. So my guppy is called Aryan. He's now 6.5 years old. So for the first time in 12 years, all of us were together during Corona, during the COVID times. And what we went through, I thought 250 plus guys, mummy and daddy, and two youngsters, 25 and 29, it would be difficult to stay together without a World War II, 3, and 4. But we had a blast. Scrabble and Ludo, and then making good stuff to eat and pulling each other's leg, Antakshari, singing, dancing, video shooting, and all. And all this happened because together we had a cache of memories, a truckload of memories to fall back on. We would just open the old albums and then start, indulging in some fun and leg pulling and all. So I wanted to write this from the viewpoint of a guppy. Now, a guppy is a lazy kind of guy. He's just sitting, and then all this stuff is happening. And for him, it's a great time because he's getting 4 times the amount of food because everybody wants to pet him. And then there are also some very funny moments like this fellow is happily, lazy and completely asleep to the world and thinking about his partner with benefits. When suddenly he hears some kind of a din and he just jumps up thinking that the sky has fallen on his head or the washing machine has burst and all, and he rushes out and he finds everybody, hitting the plates or banging the plates and singing and jumping and all that. Then the time when they have those diyas. So these myriad moments are there. But basically, it is about how during the worst of times, sometimes the best in each one of us comes out. It is about empathy. It is about connecting. It is about reaching out, both for animals as well as for human beings. I've even talked about the fact that when COVID happened and all the animals came out, and which proved that nature is not the intruder, man is the intruder. And even when nature came out and reclaimed its space, it didn't do with violence. And the message for the next generation is that they are only custodians of nature, not the owners. So this book talks about all these things.
What a wonderful thought and what a wonderful message. I think this could be a point for our viewers out there. Okay, if anybody has a question, please do share it on the chat window and I'll pick it up. And as we go towards the wrapping end of this conversation, I'll again come back to some takeaways, like uh, through your own journey, through your own style of writing that you have evolved. And because we often say that, certain things cannot be taught. So what do you think about creative writing first as a 21st century skill? The national education policy talks about it. The prime minister has talked of the country has talked about it. The importance for critical thinking, creative writing in these across disciplines. I mean, we shouldn't be limiting them to a specific domain or career. So that could be one aspect. Maybe what's your thought on that? And then any tips that you would like to give? I mean, yes, you have touched upon some points, but how, yeah, I mean, what you have said is that you need not be, everybody can aspire to be a writer, but how? What is the process? And here I would like to bring you to the memory of the publishing of your first book. How did that come about?
First and most important is the question which you asked regarding creative writing, why it is important. In fact, creative writing or storytelling or speaking, public speaking, today I think this is one of the most important skills. Now, suppose I want to make a purchase. I want to purchase a lathe, Now, and I'm moving a proposal. That also needs a certain kind of, what should I say, logic, that why I want it, how much it's going to cost, what are the competitors in the market, why I need it now, how it's going to improve the productivity, and if I don't get it, what's going to happen to the graph. That is one. Then suppose you are proposing to a fiance, not you, you are married. Suppose you are proposing to your fiance. That is also, you have to be creative there. I'm not saying you have to lie, but you have to be creative. You have to put your best foot forward, not the dishonest foot forward, but the best foot forward. You are marketing yourself to your senior colleague. You're saying that you want a promotion. So why? There also you have to put your, you have to give the reason that why you've done so much and these are your aspirations. And if you are promoted, you can contribute so much. You can take an extra, a little bit of load or responsibility. So, or selling a product, selling an idea. Gandhiji sold India to India through creative writing and creative, his, that book, this paper was there, Harijan. Yeah. And through his travels, he sold India to India. So what else? And yesterday I saw an ad. It is from this Savlon where a handicapped lady, she's washing. She shows that how she uses her foot to paint, to create, to do the daily chores. And then she gives the importance of washing her hands. What a brilliant concept. Hand washing in COVID times, it has been told so beautifully. So everything can be told in a creative way. In fact, it has to be told in a creative way. If my son comes to me with a particular question and I want to say no to that proposal, if I can convince him in a creative way, in an honest way, in a transparent way, then I'm through. My first book, I sent it to the publisher and it was called Just a Second and Other Stories. My first story was also Just a Second. It was written for Ankita and told in her school and people loved it and all. And that's how I got published. But even now, many books of mine keep doing the rounds with the same kind of message and all. It's a struggle. It's a continual struggle. And the only thing is, you should not be disappointed. This too shall pass.
Is there any of your character those that you have created which is closest to you? If we have to know you through your characters or your books, who should we go to?
You'll have to go to the zoo. If you have to know, there is a book of mine called Now or Never, in which there is this youngster whose dad, he learns, is an alcoholic. And so he starts hating his dad, but then later he comes to know that the dad became an alcoholic because he had to save this guy through a surgery, and for paying for the surgery, he had to fix the match. Later, when he comes to know that his dad has done this for him, he and his friends get together and try to get the dad on his feet, and then he wins the bout, and he again becomes a heavyweight champion. So this particular thing, the son and father relationship, now it is based on our life. My father is not a boxer. I'm not a boxer. The only person with pugilist tendencies is my wife. But the relationship that connect, that I am for you and you are for me, come what may, unconditionally, that is there in the book. And I think I play that character because I feel I have complete, absolute, total, unconditional love for my father, which I actually learned from him.
So, like the way you describe things is always like a screenplay is unfolding before me. So is there a film transition somewhere happening, or, around the corner or back of the mind because we are in a very audiovisual time. There's so many opportunities coming up, web series, so many things are there, but has it ever triggered you like, okay, how about exploring the audiovisual media?
I mean, I don't have the confidence actually right now, but this book, which I talked about, Now or Never, the rights have been purchased by a Bombay-based producer. So he's planning to make a movie out of that.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Looking forward to
Yeah,
and
you.
more such interpretations, because I have had the pleasure also of reading some of your works. Like especially I was very stricken by the way you had imagined the tales of Lord Jagannath, and the way you got into the essence of Odisha and the Odia way of life, and having come into this. So wherever you go, you make the place your own, and I think that comes across your writing. The way you conceive your characters, they're so full of life. People who you can. I think relatability would be another important aspect in writing, because unless
Yeah,
we are.
that is true. You're absolutely right, because when I came to Odisha, I did not know the language. So I started speaking, and I found that the people of Odisha are so sweet, so gentle, so encouraging, that rather than pointing out mistakes, they encouraged me to speak. They told me new words and all. And now, after 2 or 3 decades, I go around, giving speeches on stage in which the literary maestros like Professor Manoj Das and all are there. And similarly, in terms of the culture. So I believe that one should always adapt to a new culture, because that's the only way you can grow, whether in creative writing or storytelling or in any field. If you live in these compartments, you're never going to grow as a human being.
And as we like wrapping up, so there is hardly any genre that you have left to explore. Is there any still out there that you would want to try next, or planning to try?
Great question. I'm actually working on my autobiography also. Yeah, I started writing it quite some time back. Then I kind of got stuck. So now I want to go back to it. Now that I have some more time, I'll go back to it.
So will it be fiction, semi-fiction, non-fiction, or
I think if I make it fiction, I will be murdered. So it'll be semi-fiction.
So on that note, I mean, there is a film in the pipeline, or the book is coming on your life. So there is so much happening, and so much to always look forward to when we converse with you. Like there is you feel like, your life is like your 24/7 is maybe 48/7, or 96/7, how your days pan out. But I think that's the way. I mean, that's what helps us create and maybe connect. And again, the I think another great takeaway that our the future aspiring writers out there who are watching the chat should think about is empathy. If you cannot empathize, then you cannot be a great writer or a communicator.
Piyush, when you talked about empathy, I had just conducted a webinar, coordinated a webinar on empathy. In schools in Denmark, they have this empathy classes called Klassens Tide, where they teach empathy for a week. Every week for an hour for the kids aged 6 to 16. And you know what they teach? They have no competition. They have only collaboration. A person who's weak in a particular subject, he helps somebody who's strong in some other subject. And there are no races, nothing. Everybody works together for a common goal. And that is what empathy is all about. And that is something Barack Obama had declared that the biggest issue in our society is the growing empathy deficit.
Right. And with this long pandemic panning out, and though we can, there are hopes, or the silver lining, the end of it may be distant horizons, it is visible. What would be your last take, or a last word, like how do we make our time in this period meaningful?
Great question again. According to me, our generation or your generation or in between generation, they have never had so much of time to spend with their relations, with their kids, with their parents. So utilize this time. I don't know why they're getting so worried about it. Don't go out. Stay at home and spend these moments are never ever going to come. Just imagine daily you are with your kid 24/7. Instead of haranguing them that you do this lesson, do that, do some storytelling, play some game, spend some time, try to become a part of the child's memory. One small thing I would like to add is I have created a concept called anytime memory card. Like you have an ATM card, so you have anytime memory card. Now this card has no value because it is priceless. It cannot be torn, it cannot be lost, it cannot be crumpled. And how do you create it? By investing time. So keep adding to this card, and it will grow and grow. Whatever the state of the share market, this will continue growing, and you can encash it anytime you want. So this is a great time to build the ATM or the anytime memory card. What are you guys waiting for?
What a thought to take home. I mean, once a storyteller, always a storyteller, an empathetic storyteller, a moving storyteller, a touching storyteller, a storyteller we would love to come back again and again, whenever we can and whenever you can give us that time. Such a pleasure to connect with you again, to talk to you. Ramendra Kumarji, it's a pleasure and a genuinely heartfelt pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed myself. Jai Jagannath.
Jai Jagannath.